Sleeping naked is nice, but it is not warmer than sleeping with clothes. Myth busted. Stay tuned for an episode filled with bad advice and hopefully some good ones. Now we have 7 of these bad advices to talk about, so let's get to it. Our first bad advice is that a 2R value sleeping pad are good enough and safe for 3-season hiking. And just like he also pointed out, is that people are used to sleeping in their bed with like 20 in R value, so why go as low as 2R to risk hypothermia or just to be cold and miserable? Bad advice? Yes, I try to recommend 2 different ones. A 3-season pad for a warm sleeper, 3.5 in R value, and for a cold sleeper, a minimum of 5. And that will take you down to about -5 degrees Celsius in ground temperature. For warmer conditions, you will do fine with an R value of 2, but if you want to buy only 1 pad for 3 seasons, I believe my recommendations to be a good start for you to know what to look for. Our number 2 is that lightweight gear isn't good enough for the Swedish mountains, or any mountains for that matter. But this is quite a common opinion for them not very interested in ultralight gear. I would like to sit here and say that they are completely wrong, but they are not. When it comes to backpacks, rain gear, shoes, pads, sleeping bags, cookware and clothes, they are all wrong. But when it comes to tents, there is a little bit of truth in it. Not all ultralight tents are good enough for the mountains, but that is also true for other tents that not fit into the category of ultralight. Teepees are the best performing tents in higher wind, and if looking for an ultralight tent to bring for these kind of conditions, here are a few good options. Teepee tents like Bonfus Midus, Hyperlight Mountain Gear Ultra Mid, or trekking post supported tents like Top Tent Stratospire and Dan Durstan's X Mid series. This is just to mention a few good tents, but remember that if it is too windy, don't pitch your tent in a too exposed area and try to find a more well protected camp spot. Bad advice number 3 is that there is no need for a personal water filtration kit. Use the group. I love hiking in a small group of people, but that doesn't mean I rely on them to support me for something as important as water filtration or any other gear for that matter. All the guys I'm hiking with always bring a full kit to be self-supportive, and according to me, that is great because then we will have backup if something happens. This covers everything from tents, cookware to first aid kit, fuel and water filtration. Lucky for the group in the story behind this post was that the one who made the post brought his filter anyways, and then had the possibility to supply 13 people with water for 2 days. Next time they might not be that lucky. The bad advice number 4, sleeping naked is warmer than sleeping with clothes on. This is perhaps not bad advice, but an old myth or an old truth, and that is of course not true. Adding layers inside your sleeping bag or quilt is a good way staying warm. My quilt has a comfort temperature rating of +3 degrees Celsius if I'm sleeping with my base layer on. If I then also add a fleece and later on also down pants and a puffy, my new comfort rating is then -2 degrees. This way of layering makes your gear set very flexible. Sleeping naked is nice if it is warm enough, but it is not warmer than sleeping with clothes. Myth busted. The number 5 of bad advice given is that you need 2 socks to avoid blisters. Again, not true, but it can help. The idea is that you will get the friction between the socks and not your skin, so less friction against your skin means less blisters. But a lot of friction also happens between your toes, and for that 2 pairs of socks doesn't help much. 2 socks is also warmer, and warmer feet means more sweat, and more sweat means more moisture and more friction and higher risk of blisters. 2 socks are mainly used in boots and especially non-line boots. For boots with a liner or trail runners, you can just as well use only 1 pair for that, and I do recommend using toe socks for less friction between your toes and less risk of blisters. It is also a good thing if you have toe spreaders. Then you can have a toe sock liner with a toe spreader on top, and on top of that the over sock. This way the toe spreader will stay in place. 2 socks aren't a bad idea generally, but normally you would do fine with only 1. Then number 6, the sleeping bag temperature ratings, and that they are most of the time bad advice and not true. But to be honest, sleeping bags and quilt that I have owned have been pretty accurate. The quilt I have is said to have a comfort temperature of about +3 degrees Celsius. I sleep much better if the temperature is above 5, but that is mainly because I'm a cold sleeper. And maybe that is the reason and the real problem, that most of us don't know if they are a cold or a warm sleeper. So just because a bag has a comfort temperature of +4 degrees doesn't mean it is accurate for you. And we got to remember that the comfort temperature is the one to look for, where a standard woman is comfortable and are not feeling cold in a relaxed posture. Anyways, my recommendation is to go for a bag with a slightly higher comfort temperature than the temperature expected. This because if it is raining, the bag will accumulate a bit of water and get damp and lose a bit of its insulating properties. And because it's a better idea to be a little bit too warm and open up the bag slightly than to be cold and miserable. Our final bad advice, and bad advice number 7, is there's no need for rain gear on this hike. It's gonna be sunny the whole trip. This is of course just bad advice. You should always bring rain gear to be prepared. At least that is what I recommend. But then of course I have no experience hiking in the desert, and maybe that's the only place where this is applicable. I don't know. Please, you guys who are a desert hiker or used to hike in these kind of conditions, do you bring rain gear? Please let us all know by leaving a comment. Now I hope you enjoyed today's episode about the bad advice. Now hit like, subscribe and turn on the notifications, and I hope also to see you again next week. But for now, bye bye.